I'd love to hear about the catalyst for starting birthFund.
Really, the catalyst for starting birthFund was my own experience just navigating the maternal health care system. Even as somebody with resources and privilege and access, I found it so discouraging at best and demoralizing at worst. And I, as a journalist, understood the statistics associated with the maternal health crisis and how Black women are disproportionately dying during and after childbirth. And yet, as an individual, I didn't understand what that really looked like and why this was happening until I saw how close I could become to being a statistic. And that was jarring and alarming. And it felt like I owed it to not just myself and my child, but to every birthing person, every mother, every Black mother, woman of color who wants to be a mom one day, to figure out how we can fix this. And so I feel really incredibly lucky that I met midwives along my journey, and they changed my life. They changed the whole trajectory of my pregnancy and my childbirth experience, which, by the way, is so much more than just like, I think people think, well, you got a baby, you got it, however you got it here, at least you got the baby. But no one really has emphasized the power of waking up to your power through childbirth, and how transformative that experience can be if your power isn't stripped from you at every point along the process. And so midwifery is about keeping the right container around women through this journey so that they can unlock that power. And so anyway, birthFund is about funding midwifery care for families who can't afford it. It's not covered by insurance in this country, but what we know is that 80% of the maternal deaths in this country could be averted with midwifery care. So it's an essential, life-saving form of quality birth care that needs safeguarding and it needs investment. And that's what we're singularly focused on.
Yes. And I want to hear more about your home birth experience, because at my fragrance launch event, I had a moment where I turned to Elaine and I was like, oh, you do a home birth? I'm like, you're so brave to do a home birth. And you were like, I think you're brave for going to the hospital, actually.
Oh, wow.
Which, it's a very different kind of framing. And I understand why you feel that way.
Yeah.
But I also, I'm sure you've heard from people like, oh my gosh, giving birth at home, it seems kind of like you're so far away from the doctors and the help and the people that, quote, know what they're doing. There's a lot of misconception around how people choose to give birth. So I want to hear more about your home birth experience.
Yeah. And there's so much stigma around home birth and midwives, and it's all by design. If you actually roll back the clock and you study history, midwives gave birth to this country. Midwives are birth experts. Doctors are, the ones assigned to women to give birth are surgeons. They're medically trained for medical interventions.
Right.
But if you have a low risk pregnancy, for the most part, the midwife is well equipped and potentially best equipped.
Best equipped, yes.
To catch your baby and to guide you through the journey towards that. They're the ones who take your prenatal appointments. They spend not 15 minutes with you, an hour with you.
Wow.
They not only look at your blood pressure, weigh you, check some boxes on a clipboard and send you on your way. They sit with you. They want to know what you're eating. They want to know what your stress levels are. They want to know what your relationship is like with your intimate partner. They want to speak with your intimate partner, help them understand their role in advocating for you throughout this process. They want to pair you if they see that you're going through, they're preventative in their approach, which most doctors are not in this country. The care is holistic. It's wraparound care. It's completely different from any model of care I even knew was accessible to us through I'd never seen anything like it through the medical system. And so I think we're taught to not expect more.
Right.
We're taught to give our power away to the authority in the white lab coat, right? To not take up too much of their time, to not ask too many questions, to not seem difficult, to go with what they say. And too many women are dying because of it. Midwives they just have a completely different approach, a completely different model of care that I found to be liberating. Like I had gone through so many doctors, and I'm an easy person to get along with. I was like, how hard can it be? Like, just so you know.
And you have a lot of access. That's the other thing. You have a lot of access, health insurance, you're very well connected. And if it was difficult for you,
that was my thought process, was like, if this is the experience I'm having with doctors who are being condescending, who are rushing me out of appointments, telling me I'm asking too many questions, who are laughing at me. I mean, I had so many jarring experiences, doctor after doctor, that I recognize this is a systemic issue. And if this is happening to me, what's happening to folks whose English is not their first language, or they don't even have a high school diploma, you know, or they live in a maternal health desert, or they don't have enough time to keep dating different doctors, right? Like, it was a wake-up call for me in such a major way. So like you, I did go into my first pregnancy thinking, I'm just gonna go to the hospital, I'm gonna find a doctor, I'm gonna have my baby in the hospital like everyone else I know, my mom, my grandmother. But the reality is the statistics have actually gotten worse over time. From the time my mom gave birth to me to now, our maternal death rates have spiked.
Wow.
So this was she had a different dynamic with her doctor than we have the opportunity to have today. The system is completely broken, and it's very much profit over patient. And so, but what has lingered is the norms around doctors are the right people to see for birth. It's scary to not see a doctor. It's scary to do it at home. But so anyway, I felt having a home birth, I do want to make it clear though, like, because I feel I can hear myself and I'm like, do I sound like that home birth lady now? I sound like that crunchy home birth lady. But
I actually want you to set the scene for the home birth, because I actually wanted to hear exactly what was happening. I want to hear if mom was there.
She was there.
I need to hear the whole thing. But one thing I did want to share, I went to an event of yours, and I got to hear some amazing women speak from Kindred Space, which I know is an organization you work with. I was induced for my first pregnancy, and I didn't realize until I went to that event of yours that induction is something that doctors like to do because it's convenient. You know, babies come in the middle of the night, usually very inconvenient hours. Doctors love a schedule. And so it was proposed to me, hey, do you want to get induced, you know, in 2 days? And I was like, sure. I just said, I didn't do any research. I just said, sure, these are doctors, sounds great. Now that I've learned more from your event, that oftentimes when you are induced, it can be a much more difficult labor because you're forcing the baby out essentially before they may be ready. And not to say that all some people have inductions and have a great, safe, easy, happy delivery. It took a long time. They had to do the balloon, they had to do the Pitocin, they just had to do a lot to get it started. So now for this birth, it's come up already. I'm like not even 35 weeks and they're already asking me, do you want to get induced? Do you want to get this on the schedule? And I've just said, no, I'm going to, when the baby's ready, she'll come.
Yes.
So that's I have to really credit you for creating the space and the environment to even have, because I would have been totally unaware. I probably would have scheduled an induction again.
And how are we supposed to know better?
Right.
No one's teaching us about what to expect in birth. And we are well educated.
Right.
We're, professional women. We've figured out a lot of things in our lives, but this is something we can't figure out on our own. Like, we need to be educated about this. And that's part of the urgency for me around building birthFund. There was so much I was shocked I did not know about what it takes to become a mom. Period. But especially navigating this system. But what you're speaking to is the norm in this country. If you at that point there's pressure on you to do what your doctor is suggesting to you, and you've never had to question a doctor before usually. So why would you start now when your baby's life is on the line, right? Like, but those are the moments where you're the most vulnerable. And unfortunately, I want to word the way I say this carefully, but truly you're being preyed upon. This is my true feeling about it. And research suggests this. It's a systemic issue. It's about the training. They don't know that they're suggesting something to you that could potentially be life-threatening. This is what the doctors and the nurses are taught is the norm and this is the standard of practice.
Yes.
But they also don't know better. And the reality is, as soon as you say yes to being induced, you are setting off, this is a trigger point for a cascade of interventions to come. And each of those interventions have a cost associated. So the price of giving birth goes up. Who does that benefit? You or the doctor?
Right.
Or the system?
Right.
Benefits the system. So when you start to interrogate the norms around birth in this country and why we think what we think, you start to realize we've been misled.
Absolutely.
And it's not to vilify doctors, because I don't think that the system benefits doctors. Doctors who really want to take great care of their mothers that are in labor don't have the time to. The system isn't set up for them to spend the time to allow you to labor, to go to 40 weeks and then to take as long as you need. Their system is set up profit over patient care. They have to get you in and out. So if they can convince you to do it on a schedule that works for them and that keeps the numbers higher, more women, they can service more people. I mean, it's literally like a factory approach to birth care. And so that's why I say now, on the other side of educating myself and waking up to some of these realities that I never would have uncovered had I not had such bad experiences myself, had I not been introduced to midwives who changed the way I think about birth, like I would have said yes to all the things too, and frankly, what I want to clarify is, like, I was not this home birth mom. Like, I didn't.
I need to hear about the home birth experience.
Okay, I'll tell you about it, but just know, like, this wasn't it took me. I didn't say yes to having a home birth until I was 36 weeks pregnant.
Oh wow,
that's how deep the conditioning and the stigma ran within me too. So, like, I get when people say, when they clutch their pearls and like, you're gonna have a home birth, like, wow, that's so scary. Like, I get it, because I was that girl too. Like, literally 2.5 years ago. And I remember even when I fell in love with my midwife and I was like all in on like understanding how important this is and why the alternative medical approach isn't always ideal. I still was like, but girl, can you bring an epidural? I was like, if you can bring the epidural,
we're good.
Where do I sign? Like, because like everything about it, like the reality is, it's like, and Jonathan actually made the decision ultimately, because I was still like, I don't know. But he's like, think about it. Everything that you want for your birth, from being able to move around, being able to eat throughout.
Oh, yeah, I couldn't eat. I had to suck on ice chips.
No one tells you that. No one tells you that, right? Like, unless you know to ask, like, no one tells you that, oh, by the way, they don't let you eat or drink for as many hours as you're in labor doing the hardest work of your life. Are you kidding me? I'm going to get hungry. You're going to tell me I can't eat? Like, it's the simple things. It's also simple things like, this is the simplest thing, but this was the aha moment for me, where I was like, it made me question everything I'd ever been taught about birth. A friend of mine who did a home birth was like, Elaine, if you were pushing out a bowling ball from a hole this big, just tell me, would you rather be lying on your back, or would you rather be upright working with gravity to get the thing out?
Right.
I was like, upright, for sure. And from that moment forward, I thought about everything. Okay, why are women laying on their backs? Why do we associate giving birth with laying on your back in a hospital bed with connected to an IV machine? And I watched documentaries. I started digging into like the answering that why. I put my journalist hat on. I got really curious about it. And if you think about it, a doctor, it's much easier for a doctor to sit on his butt while you lay on your back, so he can do what he has to do to get the baby out. That is not ergonomic. I mean, this is a simple gravity question. Like, like, it just makes sense to be upright. So things like that made me realize, like, I want to be able to move freely. And these were then questions that, these were then like thoughts that informed my conversation with my doctor. I would be like, so could I move around? Would that be okay? Could I maybe not get an IV until I need it? Could I drink water? Could I have food? Because these aren't necessarily policies. These are just practices that have become the norm. And as I started asking these questions, which to me were like basic questions and basic requests. This is not me coming in like J-Lo asking for white flowers, right? Like, but I was rejected. Like, it was like I was laughed at. They were like, no, you can't do these things. What do you think this is? And I'm like, whoa. So the smallest little things that actually aid in birth were the things that ultimately led me to do a home birth, because that's the place that I felt most free and like most liberated. But not having access to the pain relief, like that part was like really tough for me. But anyway, I will tell you, home birth, once I actually did it, was the best, most sacred, like most empowering decision I've ever made for myself. It was incredible. It was
Were you in a bathtub? Did you have candles lit?
So it was, no, I wasn't in a bathtub. I actually didn't like the bathtub.
Okay.
Everybody associates home birth with like
I always
the
do.
tub.
Okay.
I didn't like the tub. As soon as I put my foot in there, I was like, wait, this is like buoying me up. I'm trying to get the baby out. Like I didn't like the tub situation. But what I did, and this was, thank God my midwife told me, when I was begging her for epidural beforehand, she was like, there are other ways. There are natural pain relief methods like the shower. She called the shower a liquid epidural. And so up until birth, I was just taking her word for it. But I'm telling you, she was not lying. Like the liquid epidural of being in a shower during labor put me in a trance. Like every vision I ever had of childbirth where like the woman is screaming and like being like, and it just feels like an emergency. It seems so crazy. And she seems like she's in so much pain. Like that was what I was afraid of. And that's why I was like, take me out. Like give me the epidural. I don't want to experience that. But what I realized is at doing birth at home in the safety of my space, in my shower, which is where I labored silently for like 7 hours, I felt like I was meditating.
Wow.
I didn't speak for probably 10 hours. I was completely silent. And I was literally like, what you see on TV is, ah! What I was like this. For like 10 hours.
Wow.
And I didn't even know that was possible. And I'm not saying it didn't hurt, but it was like the pain was teaching me. It was like telling me what to do. I was riding the waves and it was gradual and it felt like familiar. It was like, it started as like kind of like cramps, like period cramps. And then it built gradually and it just felt like way more doable than anybody ever taught me. And then literally by the time I came out of the shower, I'm telling you, Brooke, I was in the shower for like 7 hours with Jonathan, just letting the like liquid epidural do its thing. Deep in meditation. I felt like such a queen. There was like this one moment there's this one moment I will tell my grandchildren till the day I die. I remember sitting there and being like it was starting to get intense and my face kind of like, I was like grimacing and I was like, And then Jonathan was like, he was sitting kneeling, looking at me, watching me go through this. And then there was this thought that I had, because I felt like I was in meditation. So I felt like I had this download where I just felt like a message of just ride the waves. Don't go under. So don't even react to the pain. Try that. Like every impulse to like grimace or frown or tighten my hands, just breathe instead. Just breathe instead. And it reminded me of like my Pilates class where like, when it gets like crazy and you just want to be like, ugh. And they're like, keep it pretty. Keep it pretty. So I was just like, keep it pretty, bitch. And so I had this, it was just a mindset shift. And so every time I felt the wave coming, I was just like, and Jonathan's watching me for like 10 minutes. And he's like, at some point, he finally breaks the silence and he's like, babe, do you think you're going to have another contraction soon? Because he's starting to get worried. Yeah. He's just watching me sit here. And I just took like this deep breath. And I was like, I just had 3. I was like, I am the baddest bitch in the I'm sorry, Mom.
Sure you are. In front of you. That's pretty badass. It is. It's like, we got to give you that.
3? Like, not even 1?
You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And I was like, he can't even tell.
Right.
And then when I came out of the shower, they sat me down on the birth stool, and I'm telling you, Brooke, I pushed maybe 6 times.
Wow.
Your midwife said 2 or 3.
2. I'm telling you, all of a sudden, this 9-pound juicy baby boy lands in my arms, and I'm like, not a scream from either of us. The most beautiful, peaceful, sacred experience. And I'm like, oh, you can't tell me that I'm not a superhuman.
Yes.
And that awareness has carried me, like that has been such a shift in my life. How I approach work, how I approach disappointment, how I approach frustration. I'm like, I'm the baddest to the world.
Yes.
Like, I pushed out a 9-pound baby unmedicated on my bedroom floor. This is nothing, you know?
Right,
It really has unlocked some major understanding of my power as a woman that we all have.
Yeah.
Yes.
That
We
I
sure
would have
do.
been numbed out for, that I
Right.
would have been too drugged or too distracted by all these people I don't know coming in and out, by the fluorescent lights, by the freaking IV that I'm stuck to. I wouldn't have gotten to that place of enlightenment. Like I wouldn't have been free enough to get there. And so for me, that's what I want for anyone who wants it. You know, there's multiple ways of giving birth, and I am not about creating a hierarchy or telling women how you should do it. But if you know that there's this option and it appeals to you and you want the opportunity to try to have a birth like that, insurance shouldn't be the reason you don't get to.
Well said.
So beautiful. Thank you so
Exactly.
much
That
for
was
sharing.
great. That's a great story.